Hi, so I'm Jose Barrero. I am an assistant professor of finance at Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de México, ITAM, in Mexico City, and I'm very happy to talk to you today about working from home. Great, so thanks very much. I'm very happy to talk to you today about how working from home is actually working during the pandemic. So let me start with a figure that is probably not going to be too surprising to many of you, which is that days worked from home jumped dramatically during the pandemic. So in the US, I've conducted a series of surveys with some colleagues surveying a few thousand Americans monthly since last May. And what we've documented is that, well, before the pandemic, there's survey evidence from official statistics that about 5% of all working days were done from home. During the pandemic, this has shot up to 50%. But again, this is probably not something that's super surprising for me. What might be more surprising and more interesting is the fact that after the pandemic, from our survey evidence, we gather that employers are planning something like 20 to 25% of all paid working days to be done from home. So while we expect the amount of working from home to be done to go down from the lockdowns of the pandemic, we still expect it to be between 4 and 5 times as much as we had before COVID-19 arrived. And so to me, this is kind of a great sign that working from home is actually working, because companies and individuals are very much still trying to do it after the pandemic. Now, what does this mean? How should we think of this 20 to 25%? So it turns out that predominantly this 20 to 25% of paid working days after the pandemic that will be done from home will mean that most workers are that workers are going to be in a hybrid environment. So this is the breakdown for what employers are planning for after the pandemic. About 70% of them are planning for their workers to work from home rarely or never. And then 20% are planning for them to work from home 1 to 4 days a week. And then the remaining 11% are planning for them to work from home 5 days a week. But what you can see is that the prevalence of working from home 1 to 4 days a week is twice as high as 5 days a week. So for those people who will have working from home days, they will be doing so in a hybrid format at twice the rate that we expect to see a full-time work from home 5 days a week or more. And this is kind of very much in line with what several companies have announced. So Citigroup was among the first companies back in March to announce that they're going to do a hybrid format in the future. Microsoft, similarly now a technology company, gave a similar announcement around the same time that they're going to reopen their offices, but they're going to expect their workers to be there, not 5 days a week necessarily, but perhaps 2 or 3 days a week or 4. And so that to me is a sign that working from home is working, in the sense that people and companies want to maintain it. But we also find in our survey evidence that workers' relative efficiency while working from home during COVID, when we ask them, how do you feel? Are you more efficient, less efficient, about the same? So a large number of people, about 45% of them, say that they're about the same, but on balance, more people say that they're more productive than those who say that they're less productive. So again, this is another sign that working from home is actually working during the pandemic, and is kind of one of the reasons why we think it's going to stick after the pandemic is all said and done. Having said that, kind of it's sort of not clear from the evidence that I've shown you so far why it is that working from home is actually working. So let me dive a little bit deeper into this, and so we've to show you a few reasons why we think this is going to stick and why we think it is working. And so the first one is that working from home has exceeded expectations. So in our monthly surveys, we've been asking the following question to our respondents: relative to expectations, how has working from home turned out? And as you can see here, for the large majority of people, it's turned out better than they expected. Only for a small minority of people, it's turned out less than expected. So what does this mean? This means that at March of last year, we were all kind of uneasy about how it was going to work, whether we were going to be able to concentrate and so on and so forth. But we've kind of made it work. We've learned that that working from home actually can be successful, and this is the evidence of this, that we've been surprised. The second reason is that there used to be huge negative stigma around working from home that has now diminished. So to give you an example, this is if you had conducted a Bing image search back in March of 2013, these were the images that sort of came up. They were conveying a very negative image of working from home, people working in their underwear, kind of disorganized, so on and so forth. If you repeat this again, so we repeated this exercise in January of 2021, and you see kind of the tone of the images became much, much more positive, right? So these are all happy, productive people who are working from home, right? And so actually in our survey evidence, we see exactly the same thing. We see that when we ask people, how have the perceptions of working from home changed among the people you know? A large majority, again, tell us they've improved amongst almost all or amongst most or some of the people I know. And only for a small number of people have the perceptions of working from home actually worsened. Right? So again, this is another reason or another evidence that shows it's working. And kind of now that you're not looked down upon when you work from home, it makes a lot of sense for it to stick around, and it's evidence that it is working. The third reason I want to go with you is that workers have made investments enabling their ability to work from home. So this is about $600 per worker on equipment, about 13 hours into learning how to work from home, learning how to use video conferencing software, how to operate remotely with your employer. And similarly, businesses have done a huge investment as well. So for example, this is private fixed investment in information processing equipment and software in the US. You see this time series is kind of flat over time, but then when the pandemic arrives, investment in computers and peripherals and cloud infrastructure by businesses has also increased. So these investments, both by businesses and by workers, are going to stick around, but by the end of the pandemic. And so they're part of the reason why things have worked and why they will continue to work in the future. Okay. The fourth reason why I think working from home has worked and why it'll stick is that it looks like there's residual fear of proximity to others. In other words, when we ask people in our survey after a vaccine arrives or when a vaccine has been widely available and most people have been vaccinated, what would you do? A majority of them actually say, I would not completely return to my pre-COVID activities. I would avoid at least things like the subway, crowded elevators, or taxis, or something like that. So it's worked, in other words, because we kind of want it to work, because we're all still a little bit afraid of interacting with others. Now, the final reason why that I think is evidence that working from home is working and why it'll continue to work is this graph, which shows that technological innovation has enabled working from home and will continue to enable it in the future. So this is showing you the fraction of patent applications in the US that are related to work from home over the past 10 years. And you can see this is a fairly flat picture up until the arrival of the pandemic. And then once the pandemic arrives, the number of patents in this direction suddenly explode. So this is evidence that we've made it work because the technology is there, and the technology is actually improving over time. And so finally, it's kind of no surprise that when we ask workers what would they like, this is what they say. They'd like to work from home predominantly at least a few days a week. Now, let me leave you with the final challenge, which is managing a hybrid workforce. We know that this is going to be the predominant form of working from home in the months and years to come, but it is very much not obvious how to manage this, a workforce that is in the office part of the time and at home part of the time. And so as companies like here is Tim Cook move to this hybrid workforce, this is the challenge going ahead and what we need to really think
about. Thank you very much, Jose. I think a lot of us can resonate with what Jose said. I personally am an advocate for working from home, but also today I came to office and I saw a few of my colleagues that I haven't seen since March of last year. And I have to say that there's real value in actually this kind of FaceTime. So a hybrid model, as Jose said, would be the perfect one. This was a pre-recorded session actually, because Jose could not be with us live today. So for any questions, please write them down in the chat and we will make sure that we send them to him.